Welcome to the 8 Billion Project, where we're on a mission to make an impact by discovering and sharing the purpose of every person on this planet. I'm your host, Liza Florida. Enjoy today's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 8 Billion Podcast. I am your host, Liza Florida, and here we are continuing with Season 5D. My guest for today, she is a registered nurse, author, energy healer, channeler, psychic medium, and the host of a guided life podcast coming this spring. Actually, it should be out right now. My purpose is to spread the word of love and intuition by sharing about her soul teams and how loved and guided we are. Welcome, Laura West, to the 8 Billion Podcast. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so good. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
No, I am too, because this is the first time I'm going to put a nurse and a psychic channeler in 8 Billion on Season 5D.
Yay!
So audience, I want you guys to know we are just as normal as other people out there. For many years, I was doing real estate and I'm all like, if people only knew the guides that I have. So this is happening all across the planet, and I get to have a season filled with all of these guests.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Laura, okay, so I've had a chance to get to know you, but I'm pretty sure the audience is going to want to have a chance to get to know you. Could you give us let's talk about like your background story, how you grew up, how you came across these gifts, and then how you became a nurse. We're going to go through all of it.
Yeah. Well, it's, many years in the making. I think for me, what's important is that I was brought up in a multicultural household. So my mom's Korean, brought up Christian, and my dad is Caucasian, brought up Jewish. So I got to experience both cultures and religions growing up, which for me, I felt was a blessing. I really felt embraced by both cultures and religions. My parents did a very good job of taking us to church and taking us to synagogue. We mostly celebrated the Jewish holidays at home, so not so much the Christian holidays, which is fine. I get to do both now that I'm an adult. But being able to be exposed to both, it really set the stage for me to be able to feel comfortable and supported by my family to be able to explore what felt right for me. My parents didn't press one or the other on us. They really left, and I say us because I have a sister, but they really left it to us to decide which way we wanted to go when it came to religion and spirituality. I will say though, that despite having such, warm and wonderful memories of going to church and synagogue and the people that we got to meet growing up. And I will say too, my father was in the military. He was an officer in the Air Force. So we moved a lot as well. So being exposed to different cultures that way also, and meeting different people, the different places that we lived, I just really felt like I had a very strong, for most people that'd be very hard, but I feel like because our family unit was so tight that I felt like I always had that foundation no matter where we went. So despite all of those wonderful things that came with being exposed to both, I feel that it still made it difficult for me to really feel fully convicted with one or the other. Is that because I was exposed to both? I don't think so. I think that if I was just brought up Christian or just brought up Jewish, I would still have a hard time feeling like, I don't feel fully Jewish. I don't feel fully Christian. Like I kind of was trying to find where I resonated in either of those. And it was important to me because when we would go to church or we'd go to synagogue, I would see other people and they just felt like every bone in their body told them that what they were learning and being exposed to was true. And I wanted that, but it had to resonate honestly and truthfully within me. And it hadn't yet. So it was surprising to me that in my teens, probably about 16, 17 or so, at the time we were attending more Korean Christian church and not so much synagogue. It almost seemed like every time we moved, we would switch which religion we focused on, which is, I think it just was by chance. But so you can imagine my surprise when I was in this time of figuring out where religion fit in with me and my heart, that I had a dream visitation from Jesus. And in that dream visitation, he asked me to spread his word. What was really neat about that dream was one, to this day, I remember it. I was probably like 16, maybe 17. And I remember
ask you that
every detail. Yeah. I remember every detail of it. And, he came through that like proverbial misty tunnel. And
I was going to say, was he wearing the big cloak and the Jesus sandals?
He was wearing it looked like a toga with like a t-shirt underneath. He looked like Jesus, like what I would picture if I were to run into him. Was that a true depiction of him from then? I don't know. I think it was so I could recognize that it was Jesus.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. So for me, he looked like in the Renaissance pictures, like that kind of Jesus. And he was walking towards me arm in arm with a man, but I couldn't see the man. He was grayed out, but he was really buff and tall. And I remember thinking like, wow, Jesus is not very tall. Like the things that will go through your mind at those sort of really profound moments. But I remember thinking like, oh gosh, oh, he's not very tall. So anyway, he walked up to me and that was it. Like he just asked me, and I can't remember if his mouth moved or if it was like through telepathy, like how he asked me, how I knew, but the words were very clear. He asked me, will you spread my word? And I told him, because when he asked me that, all of those thoughts that I just explained before I told about that dream, where it was like, which do I really believe in? And it's like, I love them both, but I, in my heart, I can't feel it. All those thoughts, like within seconds came through. And so I answered him. I said, I'll try. That's what I said. I said, I'll try. And he was satisfied enough with that, because then he and the grayed out man left. So for years, that dream has stuck with me, because I was kind of waiting for Christianity because of that dream. And I equated Jesus only to Christianity at that time, and spreading his word. I equated that to like evangelizing. And I'm like, oh gosh, like that doesn't sound good to me. Like I can't share about something that I don't fully feel myself. It just feels very fake and look. And so I'm like, well, how does that all fit into all of this? Yeah. And since that dream, I started getting more interested in spirituality. I found Sylvia Brown books, and I started learning about spirit guides, and I started learning about the other side. And I started learning about all these things that I never learned in church or synagogue, but they felt so good to me. Like it was resonating. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. But that dream was like, but how is this it if Jesus wants me to spread his word? Because that to me was still Christian based, Christian religion based. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just be patient and wait and see where this goes. The Sylvia Brown books, I call that my spiritual awakening number one. It was around that time that I met my first spirit guide in a dream. Lots of dream visitations.
Wait,
I know it's been busy.
And that again is around 16, 17.
That was probably later teens. I was probably, 18 or something like that. Okay. Something like that. So not too long after, in the grand scheme of things. So I met my spirit guide because I learned through these Sylvia Brown books, that we all have a spirit guide. I had no idea before then. She gave an idea of how to meet your own, and you can ask them to visit you in a dream. And I did that. And then 2 weeks later, my spirit guide came in my dream, and it was very similar in nature to the Jesus dream, in that when I saw the man in my dream, I knew, similar because it was a very brief to the point encounter, just like it was with Jesus. But I knew to ask him if he was my spirit guide. Thank goodness I knew, because I feel like that's something I could have easily forgotten to ask at that moment. So I asked him, are you my spirit guide? And he said yes. And then I asked him, what's your name? And he told me it's Jason. And like, that was it. And so Jason has been with me for my whole life. He's been with me in all my lives. He's like the main guide.
Your main guide. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He's like my main guide. So I'm diving in deeper into spirituality. Gosh, a lot happened around this time. So around that time too, this must have been right before I found spirituality. I found Sylvia Brown books. my grandmother passed away. My paternal grandmother passed away. And what was significant about her passing is the night that she passed away, I had a dream about her. This was before we knew she had passed away. She was in hospice. She was sick with cancer. And I had a dream about her. And I said, Grandma, you're all better. Like, she was all in white. She walked in through the door of my great grandmother's house, who at the time was still alive. And the light behind her with the door open was bright. Like, you couldn't see anything. It was so bright. She walks in and I just was like, and what I said, Grandma, you're all better. And she said, yes, I am. And then that's when we found out the next morning she had passed. It gives me chills and goosebumps when I still talk about it.
Talk about it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that was profound. You know, at the time, I knew what it was. I knew that it was more than a dream, which, looking back to me, I think is pretty significant, considering I don't remember if I was aware of dream visitations and stuff at that time, but I knew that was significant. I shared it with my family and everything like that. So it was truly significant.
Laura, let me ask you, well, it's still probably something people are asking. Now, that had to have been, would you say, is that maybe 15 years ago, 15, 20? Because I know now it's a lot more embraced. But I was just going to say,
yeah,
at 18, starting at 16, and then you kind of ventured on your own and started looking into, that's a pretty brave girl or woman or lady, or, you know.
Yeah, right. I think that, like I said, my environment supported my exploration.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, okay. It did. I felt safe to do so. I would share my findings with my parents, because my mom, even though she was Christian, she was really into like the Buddhist teachings. So she would buy books and share with us. So, you know, very just open to whatever explored the topic of love and all the positive things.
That is amazing.
Yes, I know I'm very blessed in that sense that I had that support from the get-go, because I think that played a significant role in my development, if that makes sense.
Because I was just going to say too, Laura, and I didn't mean to interrupt
you're fine.
Time, that most people, that especially those that I've kind of come across, have found it through deep pain. So it was right. So you are a little bit of a different story here, because you were almost given the freedom to explore that, and it makes a big difference. So parents out there,
it makes a huge difference, because I feel like it set the tone for my life. It set the tone for the rest of my life, being able to explore the ideas that come with spirituality, that everybody has lived multiple lives. You know, reincarnation came along with it, that there's a whole world that we can't see with our physical eyes that are available to us. Ideas of what the other side is like, the idea that we can still talk to our past loved ones, animals or human, you know, so it's like it opened up this whole other world, and it set me up for a life of, I don't want to say empathy, though I do have that, but setting up a life of sympathy and perhaps maybe more patience and a better understanding of what people are going through. And for a teenager and young adult to have that, I think that says a lot, knowing how teenagers and young adults could be. But I will say that I still made my mistakes. Despite having had spiritual awakening number one. I still made my mistake. It was then in I was 19 years old. I met a guy and I fell head over heels for him. And then I learned that after I was like emotionally committed to him, 19, I was young, emotionally committed to him. Granted, there were no red flags, or my intuition was not firing, or I didn't notice it because I was so smitten, that I later learned that he had been to prison, and then that he would spend actually half of our relationship in prison. And there were many, many red flags.
Hey, Laura, but didn't you This is going to be the best timestamp moment. Wait, but Laura, the next question I'm going to ask is kind of, if he spent the next half of your relationship in prison, did you kind of not notice his lack of physical presence?
I am a very loyal person. I am like, in that case, to a fault. I am a very loyal person. And I will say that it got to a point where there were red flags that I was ignoring left and right. I mean, sorry, but obviously, okay.
How many years?
We were together for 4.5 years. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, what's funny is during that time, I graduated from college and nursing school. So I was, maybe he gave me time to focus on this. But I will say when he was,
he's like, I'm going to give you time, Laura. Let me just go to jail for a second.
You're distracting me. Can you do something about that?
Get you going, like to jail or something.
Oh God, I know.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So what I want to say is that there were so many red flags, and it got to the point where I noticed I was ignoring the red flags. I mean, granted, that was a big one. But there were others. Can you believe it? There were others. I write about this in my book, but I will tell you, like, it took me a long time to even admit that I was with somebody who had a record like that, because for me, I felt like I was worried I'd be judged about my ability to make good decisions. But I also learned very well. So I learned.
It's so crazy though, because it's true, right? Like you can, and so I just want to let the audience know, whether you've got the spiritual intuitive gifts, sometimes these things pass through you. You know what I mean? Like,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Because in a way, the universe still tests you. It's a good testing gauge.
Yeah. You know? And I was definitely meant to go through it, but I could tell that I was in it longer than I was supposed to, just because of the red flags and how sort of life was kind of taking a spiral. My life was taking a spiral. The more I ignored those red flags, the less I followed my intuition to do the right thing for me, the worse my life got. You know, my relationship
just redirecting you back.
Yes. Yeah. And so anyways, I learned a lot from that relationship. I definitely learned what good intuition and like red flag intuition versus, go for it intuition. Like I definitely learned the difference between I learned a lot. I learned a lot in that relationship. Making myself a priority was one of them, because I definitely lost myself during that period. So I will say that even though, you know, I had this spiritual awakening, it didn't keep me from making human-based decisions that maybe weren't in my best interest. Right. So around that time that happened, as soon as I broke up with him and it was finally done, it was like this weight was lifted off my shoulder and I felt indifferent. You know, I was like, I didn't get any feelings of, oh, I miss him. Oh, did I make the right choice? It was almost like, oh, like that is over. Finally, I can move on now. Like I do
have one more question though. Since you're on a podcast and probably everyone's going to ask, didn't Jason tell you anything? Did you at least ask Jason? No. Jason, where are you?
I know. Jason was definitely there, because that's what the red flags, those gut feelings inside me where I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But I ignored it. Mm-hmm. And perhaps I didn't think to turn to Jason at the time. I think I was still building a relationship, like a trusting relationship with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't the first thought to go to him for help. Not that he wasn't helping, because that's what those red flags were all about. I really think it was like, okay, you know, you've kind of overstayed your welcome in this experience. It's time to move on. So that's where the red flags just kept coming left and right. But so I do think that was Jason and whoever the other big guns he had to call in, one of them being my dog that he passed last year. But I do credit my parents. They were smart. my mom, she's very intuitive. They bought me a puppy around the time that I was ending things with that guy. And they bought me a puppy, and it gave me like something else to focus on, like something bigger, something like
more responsibility.
I don't know, not because it didn't feel so much like, oh, now I don't have time to worry about that. But it was more like, I don't need that anymore. Like this is what I should feel like when I was with my puppy. Like I felt like happy, and carefree. And I was like, and when I could tell the difference, maybe that's what it was.
That's what I was just going to say.
The difference. Yeah. Between yuck and feels good. So my dog Buddy, he saved me in more ways than one. I always credit him for that, because he was sort of that icing on the cake that helped me to really feel the courage to end that relationship, despite some worry of retaliation on his end. Because it's just ironic that, he cheated on me many times as well. And I never caught him, and he always was able to talk his way out of it. So I wanted to believe him. So even though in my gut, I'm like, this is just really suspicious, and I didn't listen. I wanted to listen to him. So it was really weird to me. I can't rationalize with that kind of brain, I guess, his brain. But it's like, when I finally ended it, it's like, well, now you don't have to worry about sneaking around. Like, you could be free, like go be with whoever you want. But it was like, he fought to the end to keep me, for whatever his reasons were. So I had some fear of retaliation, when I finally ended it with him. But, my dog Buddy, I like I said, I credit his timing of coming into my life, and, my mom's intuition, knowing that it was time for him to come into my life. He saved me more ways than one.
So moving fast forward now, right? Because that was the story of your upbringing. And so that was really neat to be able to have that freedom to explore, which brought it out. So audience, let your children have the freedom to explore these things, because we're telling you, it's here, it's now, it's happening. And so when you do that, a lot of us have found our guides because of deep pain. And that's what was really interesting. So in that time frame until now, tell me, like, what has happened? Do you have more guides? Obviously, you have a book. You're also, well, we knew that you're also a practicing registered nurse. So how does all of that come together for you?
Yeah, I know, huh? So since that experience, different things would happen in my life. Lots, the dream visitations of people who've passed, whether they were my family members, whether they were my friends, or whether they were family members of friends, would still occur. I would hear disembodied voices in that in between dream. I awake in a sleep state. Every once in a while that would happen. So all these sort of experiences occurred until. And I was working as a nurse. I've been doing it now for, 13 years or something like that. So I've been working as a nurse for a while. And I guess I wanted to go into healthcare when my grandmother got sick. So that was sort of the plan at the beginning. Yeah. So so I just stuck with that plan, and that's how I'm here. And what I love about healthcare is that you get to work with people very intimately, especially in their most vulnerable times, which I think is hard for a lot of people to witness, but to be able to be a part of that person, that journey, whether it's to help them feel better in any way that we can, or help them heal, or just even be an ear for them to talk to. There's so much reward in that profession. So it's not something I don't see myself ever leaving. And I feel like my spirituality helps me a lot, not only with my patients, but with the relationships that I have with my colleagues. So spirituality definitely has found its way and weaved its way into all aspects of my life. It's just a part of me now. And so what happened was, it was a pretty, hard experience. And this is what led to spiritual awakening number 2. So in this particular case, I did something that my gut was telling me not to do, but I did it anyways. And because of that, I did get into a little bit of trouble. And it was, I was so, I do not like getting into trouble. So it was with work. So I got in trouble with my boss. And I am like the person who would do anything to not get in trouble. And so like, as soon as I got called into the office, like I couldn't help, I was like crying. And she was like, I turned pale. She was like, oh my God, like, are you okay? Like she was genuinely worried about me because one of my biggest fears related to work, of course, our biggest fear is hurting a patient or anybody. But as far as luckily no patients were hurt, it wasn't anything like that, but it was a decision that I made that wasn't, the right one. And I just like freaked out. And so, that for me was very profound, pretty traumatic for me because of the type of person that I am. And so it was from there, that moment, that situation that caused me to start to ask and explore, well, how can I hone in on my intuition more? That was literally the question that I would ask. How can I hone in on my intuition? Thinking what I was asking was, how can I learn to listen more if something doesn't feel right? That's what I thought I was exploring. Little did I know what that question actually meant. So I had a good friend. She recommended that I go see a psychic at one of our local New Age stores. And I was interested. I had never done it before. And so I decided to do that. And I wanted to ask her, how to hone in on my intuition. And she told me, I want you to start meditating. So I went and I visited the psychic. She's great. And she told me to start meditating. And I said, okay, I'll be honest. I was scared to meditate. I was scared that I was going to like leave my body vulnerable for it to be possessed. That's what I was afraid of.
I hear some people have that fear of that.
Yeah. Which is, looking back, I mean, I'll tell anybody now that's a ridiculous notion. Don't worry about that. You're so loved and protected. It's not going to happen. But so her telling me to do that and her telling me, don't worry, you're loved and protected. You'll be fine. That was all I needed. So I started meditating. And that was the key to everything. That was the door to everything. Whether or not I had predisposition to what I do today, based on past experiences, with the dream visitations, the hearing the voices, whatever. But when I started meditating, I learned that what honing in on your intuition meant was connecting with spirit on the other side.
Yes. Because what meditation does is it takes you to a different level of consciousness where you almost shed the ego, where the ego is kind of what stops you from going down that path.
Yes. What I tell people too, how I like to explain it is what meditation does, because you sort of like focus on one thing, right? You don't listen to the ego, like what you said, you just focus on one thing, whether it's breathing, whether it's a sound, whatever it is, it like quiets your brain enough that spirit can now get through and communicate. I don't know, something rewires. It just happens all on its own. It's so incredible. But little did I know that that's what was happening. So then
it's probably stronger for you because you already had the gifts.
Maybe I don't know. I don't know because we all are light. We all are these spiritual beings, right? Having these physical experiences. So why couldn't the next person who hasn't had these experiences not have that if that's the direction they're meant to go? So, but everybody's journey is different. Everybody's here to learn something different. And if that's part of that journey, it will be a part of it. And if it's not, then it won't. So for my journey, it was definitely a part of it. And I learned later too with another psychic at a fun little Scorpio party my girlfriends and I had, because several of us are Scorpios. We said, we'll invite a psychic. It'll be fun. So that meeting with the psychic was like in July, started meditating around then. And then this was in November. We had that Scorpio party, and another psychic came and she told me that I was channel writing, and I was in school for my master's at the time and writing papers. I was at school for my bachelor's in nursing at that time. I remember thinking like, that makes so much sense, because my biggest fear of going back to school was having to write papers, because I didn't feel like I was a strong writer. But now that I was back at school writing papers, it felt like it was coming so naturally. And I was like, oh, wow, this is actually pretty good. Maybe it's all my life experience that I've developed over the years. I'm not like in high school or college, early college years anymore. I'm older now. So maybe I'm a better writer. I could speak better. And she's like, you could think you're doing a good job, but you're actually getting it channeled from the other side. I was like, hey, that's cool. However I get the information. So I was doing really well. So then I said, well, to myself, well, if I'm channeling unintentionally, what would happen if I channeled intentionally? So that night I actually started writing in a journal and asking questions. I had already been documenting my journey since seeing that psychic in July because she told me to. So I was already documenting all of my experiences. So I started channel writing, the words just popped into my mind. And I just didn't try and make sense of the sentence at the time. I read it afterwards, and there were things that came into my mind that I had never heard of before that I was able to verify later doing a Google search of what it meant. So, that's when I knew that it wasn't coming from me. And going back to that Jesus dream, because like I said, it had followed me, and I kept wondering how that dream fit, that request of his fit into my life. And so around the time when I realized I could channel write, I was like, well, why don't I try channeling Jesus? Why not? So I channeled him to ask him, what was meant by that dream all those years ago. And he told me what I meant to spread is the word of love. That's it.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that's as simple as that. Doesn't matter which religion or anything. That could be a part of it if that's for you. But really what we're meant to spread is the word of love, because that's what Jesus represented. That was his word. So when I wrote that down, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And then he told me who that guy was, who he was arm in arm with.
Who was it?
I'm thinking, oh, it's like maybe a guardian angel, or maybe it was Jason, my guide. He told me it was God. And that thought never once crossed my mind. So when I wrote it down, I actually had to stop and put the pen down, because I was like, I felt so unworthy and so amazed at the same time. Like,
it was such a profound spiritual moment for you. I've had profound. Those. It's just literally because when I'm journaling and I'm channeling now, because I could do that, when it's so profound, I'm just like, I stop. And they're like, no, keep writing. I was like, I can't write. It's so
I need to process.
I was like, and now I had to move to like audio. Oh my goodness.
Because you can't write fast enough, huh?
No.
Yeah.
And they said, just sometimes keep writing. And I was like, well, what good is it going to do if I can't even read my own writing later on to see the messages?
What has helped is typing too. I'll use my keyboard because I can type faster than I can spell. So I'll do it that way.
Know what? I might actually try that one time, because sometimes it's just like, it looks like a bunch of scribbles because I cannot keep up with how fast they're sending me the messages.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, and meditation, I credit meditation for allowing that when I'm starting to do it intentionally.
So did that end up giving way to you writing your first book or writing your book?
That helped. I went to visit that same psychic again. And that's when she, confirmed I was writing down, make sure you're writing everything down, because I see writing a book. And at the time, like, the thought of writing a book was intriguing, but it just seemed very overwhelming. It just seemed like too much. So I was like, it's like a nice idea. I'll just keep jotting down my experiences and then see what comes.
Right? Writing down. Now I have like 10 different journals. I'm all like, what's going to go inside the book?
And then I had another friend, a nurse colleague, separate. She had no idea I had this conversation with this psychic, ask me, are you writing everything down? Because I can see writing a book. And at that point, I was like, okay, that's two different people, two separate situations and times that have asked me the very same thing. I'm like, okay, I know it's my team talking to me, my soul team on the other side. I know it's my guides talking to me, telling me they want me to write a book. And so as soon as So I got off the phone with her. And as soon as I said, okay, I'm going to do it, I'm going to write a book. As soon as I said that, I couldn't wait to get started. It was like I had to give that permission. Once I said yes, then it was like go time. And so I grabbed my laptop. I was ready to start writing right then. I was so excited. And that's how I know when it comes from my guides and my intuition, because when I get the idea in my head, I get so excited. I just go.
Yeah, it's a
and I can't wait to get started.
Yeah, I had that on another podcast interview where she was just saying that she'd ask a question and she goes, there was just all this flood of response. And she goes, I don't know where it came from.
Isn't
and that's
amazing?
how she got her gift, like the Akashic Records gift. At a time, no one knew what Akashic Records were.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And so, but I will say, like, looking at a blank screen can be very daunting when you realize that there's a book that's going to come from that. And so, because at that point I was already intentionally channel writing, I said, well, I was telling Jason, my guide, I was like, you guys want me to write this book. You guys are going to help me write this book. So we're going to channel, the direction of it. So the forward of my book is actually from Jason, my guide. He wrote the forward for my book. Yeah, which is really neat, really neat.
And
yeah.
how long now? How long now, Laura, has your book been out?
It came out last October.
Okay, so not a year yet.
Not a year yet. Yep, not a year yet.
All right. Yeah. So the title of your book for the audience, if they would like to grab a copy,
it's called Guided.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Guided. And it's
Guided.
It's a whole book about your journey. And
it is. Yes, I love to teach. I do it with nursing. I'm actually like more of like an educator. I used my experiences from my awakening, number 1 and number 2, to help showcase what an awakening can look like for those who might be newer in their own awakening, or want to help someone else understand what it is that they might be going through, but they can't really articulate or put into words. So I do talk about protection, and I talk about crystals, and I talk about pendulums, and I keep it pretty simple and basic, but also showcasing examples of their use with my personal experiences.
So if anyone in the audience that's watching wants to know what a pendulum looks like.
That's gorgeous. I love it.
I was talking about this with someone else. So they also call this the dowsing rod, right?
Yeah.
I call it pendulum, but I think people also call it dowsing rod. So whenever I have questions for the audience, I'm sorry if you're listening on audio, but if you want to watch the video, we'll talk about it. So this is what a pendulum is, guys.
That's gorgeous.
Use it to communicate either with our guides, just ask questions to the universe. It'll be neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we also, another thing Laura has done is she has recently launched her podcast. So congratulations, Laura.
Thank you.
And it's also, I'm assuming it's called Guided.
Oh, it's actually called A Guided Life.
A Guided Life. It's like literally right here in front of my face. Yeah. A Guided Life podcast.
Yeah.
And that is going to be, I know you launched it. What is the whole premise of the podcast going to be about?
Okay. So that's basically showcasing how spirit just is involved in our everyday life, from what may seem mundane to the more profound. And so I just wanted to create this platform showing people how, especially those who don't feel connected, don't think they have a team, or don't feel like they experience spirit in their life. I want to showcase how actually they are. It just may not be these big, profound moments that we hear about, but really spirit does play a role in just about everything, and just really wanting to help be the voice for spirit. And I say spirit, when I say spirit, it's just a general term for past loved ones, guides, angels, source. Right. I mean, any entity on the other side, just an umbrella term for spirit. I just to sort of create that bridge between the two, to really showcase how involved they really are in everyone's life, everyone's life.
No, they really are. And
yeah,
I think, for myself, sometimes some people have one. I have multiple. I'm pretty sure you do, Laura, and they can have names, or you'll know what they look like and they might not have a name. It's so many different things. It's just really connecting to that extrasensory part of you and knowing, and this podcast here, whether it's this show or this season, is here to support you, letting you guys know that you're not crazy, that this is happening on a very real level all across the world. And there's multiple, people here. And what's really interesting, right, Laura, the basis of everyone's mission is love. Yes. That's why I was so blessed. I was just like, oh, you guys can all be on this season.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's so wonderful to have so many people working on the same mission.
It is, because then it works hand in hand in terms of like, I support you, you support me. The basis is love, but it's so nice to be able to have this network of people on this energetic field that's helping raise the consciousness of humanity.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
and you audience, it could be any of your nurses in the hospital. It could be, it could be people that are working in the restaurant. It could be your real estate agent.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what sort of human job you have.
Exactly.
You're still
like,
still a person.
What are you talking about? My human 3D body job? Okay.
I know. We still have to make the world work.
But gosh, these podcasts are amazing. And I wish I had so much time. They fly by so fast. But I just wanted to have you share, Laura, if they were interested in either listening to your podcast or buying your book or finding you, how could they?
Yes, absolutely. So I have a website. It's laurawest.net. And then my book Guided is available on Amazon. And then my podcast, A Guided Life, it's available on several platforms like the basic ones, Spotify. Exactly. Okay. Yep. Yep.
More than likely, people are going to listen to it or tune in on Apple or Spotify. But I'm pretty sure that if you go on Laura's website, you guys will see all the different platforms that are there. And of course,
we're working on it. Yeah.
By the time this launches, you'll have it.
Yeah. I hope so. That's one thing that they don't teach you with doing this work is the business side of things.
No, that's, I'm so glad you were talking about that, because it's like, how? You can't ask how. Okay. But then you want me to build this big business centered around this big mission. They're like, yes, don't worry about it. We're going to give you people and all this kind of stuff.
I'm like, I
guess that's what the human experience is. This is human school, Earth school.
Yes. There's a lot to learn.
There is a lot to learn. Well, thank you so much for your contribution to season 5D and to Earth School and to all of the other audience members and human souls whose lives you touch. You will always have a voice here on 8 billion. And I'm pretty sure, Laura, after this season, I know everyone is like my family. I know that it's not just the podcast is just going to be the thing that launches us all, but
I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Power in numbers.
There is power in numbers. This is a close call, Laura. We've got to save the planet.
We do. And we don't meet people on accident. So right. I look forward to where things continue for us, either together or on our own, but I look forward to it. Absolutely.
No, absolutely. Same here.
Yay.
Well, thank you again. And audience, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode with Laura West. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the 8 Billion Podcast. If it's moved you in any way, please share your thoughts or give us a review on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. To listen to more episodes, go to 8billionpodcast.com, or to learn more about our mission, go to 8billionproject.com.